On Chicago's forgotten South Side, where shattered dreams litter crumbling streets, 12-year-old Destiny Williams cradles a shivering golden retriever found whimpering behind her housing project. Though her own stomach growls with hunger, she shares her meager sandwich with the frightened animal. The dog's fur is matted with grime, but his eyes hold an intelligence that speaks to her. She runs her fingers through his dirty golden coat, whispering reassurances. It's okay, but before we jump back into the video, let us know where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe because I have something really special for you tomorrow. And now, back to the video. It's okay, boy. I know what it's like to be lost. Destiny's thin frame belies her inner strength. Dressed in a faded blue hoodie 2 sizes too large, a hand-me-down from the community center, and jeans with carefully patched knees, she represents resourcefulness in its purest form. Her dark eyes, wise beyond their years, scan the horizon with a cautious vigilance earned from growing up too fast. Earlier that day, her science teacher had returned their tests. While other students complained about their grades, Destiny had silently tucked away her perfect score. What was the point of celebrating? The rejection letter from the Harrington Technology Scholarship still burned a hole in her pocket, its formal language a reminder that excellence sometimes wasn't enough. Your application shows promise, but due to limited positions this year, she hadn't shown the letter to her grandmother Mabel, who worked double shifts as a hospital custodian. Mabel had enough worries without adding Destiny's disappointment to the list. Instead, Destiny had crumpled the letter and stuffed it deep into her jacket pocket, determined not to let another rejection define her. Books are Destiny's escape. Dog-eared, library copies of astronomy texts and biographies of scientists stack her milk crate nightstand. Math equations dance in her dreams at night, offering patterns and certainties that real life rarely provides. Her teachers see potential. Her peers see the quiet girl who skips lunch to use the computer lab. Now, as she examines the dog's collar, tag, Destiny's nurturing nature emerges. Despite having so little herself, she never hesitates to care for others. The neighborhood kids she tutors for free, her grandmother when arthritis makes movement painful, and now this lost dog who somehow found his way to her. Blackwood Gardens housing project stretches like a concrete jungle, its buildings weathered by time and neglect. Graffiti blooms across crumbling walls, some artistic, most angry. Window air conditioners dangle precariously, wheezing against summer heat. Music and arguments drift through thin walls, creating the soundtrack of Destiny's childhood. Apartment 403 is small, but meticulously maintained. Mabel's collection of ceramic angels watches over sparse furniture, each piece serving multiple functions. The fold-out table hosts homework sessions, dinner when they can afford it, and Mabel's late-night sewing repairs for extra cash. Faded family, photos smile from mismatched frames. Destiny's mother in graduation cap, gone now for 8 years to an overdose that no one discusses. Outside, the neighborhood tells its own story. The corner store where Mr. Lee extends credit to struggling families. The basketball court with its bent rim where older boys play until dusk. The abandoned lot where, despite concrete and neglect, stubborn wildflowers push through cracks each spring. Nature's persistence mirroring the community's resilience. Inside her building's stairwell, the smells of different cooking traditions blend. Miss Ortiz's spicy beans, Mr. Washington's greens, the unfamiliar spices from the new Somali family on the 5th floor. The elevator hasn't worked in months, making Mabel's climb after long shifts even more exhausting. As evening approaches, Destiny sits on their small balcony with the golden retriever, sharing her space and sandwich. From here, she can see the distant Chicago skyline, glittering with possibility and prosperity that feels worlds away. The dog's tag reflects the setting sun as she turns it between her fingers. Maximus, she reads aloud, tracing the engraved letters and an address from a neighborhood she's only seen in photographs. Someone must be missing you something awful. The dog places his head on her lap, as if understanding her words, and Destiny makes a decision. Tomorrow, instead of using her Saturday to work on science fair preparations, she'll return this dog to where he belongs. Dawn breaks reluctantly over Blackwood Gardens, filtering grey light through Destiny's thin curtains. She wakes to find Maximus curled at the foot of her bed, his presence both comforting and concerning. Grandmother Mabel had been too exhausted to argue when Destiny brought the dog inside last night, merely raising an eyebrow before muttering, "He better be gone by tomorrow, can't afford no pet deposit." Destiny studies the address on Maximus's tag. 472 Lakeshore Drive, North Shore. It might as well be another planet. The wealthy lakefront neighborhood sits 15 miles, and a universe away from Blackwood Gardens. The bus would take nearly 2 hours with transfers. Money she doesn't have for fare. In the kitchen, Mabel sips coffee before her morning shift. Child, you know we can't keep that animal. Building manager sees him. That's just the excuse they need to evict us. I'm taking him back today, Grandma, Destiny says, pouring cereal milk carefully. Just enough to wet the flakes without drowning them. Conservation is second nature when resources are scarce. Mabel's face softens. How you plan to get all the way to North Shore? That's not a safe journey for a girl your age. Destiny's phone buzzes. A message from Jamal, her 14-year-old neighbor, who sometimes watches out for her. Police sweeping the block. Drug bust at Building C. The conflict crystallizes in Destiny's mind. She needs to return the dog today, but dangers lurk in every direction. Police presence means heightened tensions, unpredictable confrontations. The North Shore journey requires navigating neighborhoods where gang territories create invisible but deadly boundaries. Even well-meaning neighbors might report the dog, jeopardizing her grandmother's housing. Maximus whines softly, nudging Destiny's hand with his nose. The tag glints, catching sunlight, a beacon, pointing toward an impossible journey. I'll make a found sign, Destiny decides, pulling paper from her school folder. And I'll use the emergency money. The $20 hidden in her astronomy book. For real emergencies, as her grandmother always cautioned. Destiny Williams, that's for necessities, Mabel protests. This is necessary, Grandma. Someone loves him, misses him. What if nobody ever returned me to you? The simple question silences Mabel's objections. They both remember when Destiny's mother disappeared for 3 days before being found unconscious in an abandoned building. By then, permanent damage had been done. Outside, sirens wail closer. Through the window, Destiny watches as neighbors scatter from common areas, doors slamming shut all along their corridor. Chicago's finest, rarely seen responding to their community's needs, now swarm like locusts over some new offense. Maximus growls low in his throat. See? Mabel says. Even the dog knows trouble when he hears it. You can't go out there today. Destiny folds the paper into her pocket, determination hardening. I have to, Grandma. Before someone takes him away. Racing back to her room, Destiny gathers her essentials. The hand-drawn found sign with Maximus's picture sketched in pencil, her student ID, the emergency $20, and a small bag of dog treats fashioned from leftover bread. She slips on. Her most comfortable sneakers. The soles worn, but still reliable for long walks. I'll be home before dark, she promises Mabel, who stands in the doorway, worry etched into the lines of her face. You call me every hour, her grandmother insists, pressing her ancient flip phone into Destiny's hand. Battery's full, and you stay on main streets, you hear? No shortcuts. Outside, the sirens have faded, but their residual tension remains. Neighbors peek through blinds. Marcus, the floor's unofficial lookout, nods at Destiny from his doorway. You, heading out with that dog? Today's not good, little sister. 5-0 everywhere. I have to return him, Destiny explains, showing the address. Marcus whistles low. North Shore? That's some fancy people territory. Dog probably eats better than this whole building. His words sting with truth, but Destiny's resolve doesn't waver. I have to try. She attaches a piece of clothesline to Maximus's collar as a makeshift leash. The dog follows obediently, seemingly understanding the importance of staying close. At the building's exit, Destiny hesitates. The familiar landscape of her neighborhood suddenly seems fraught with new dangers, the journey ahead full of unknowns. Her hand finds the crumpled scholarship rejection letter, still in her hoodie pocket. For a flickering moment, doubt surfaces. Why go through so much trouble for people who likely have everything, who probably wouldn't do the same for her? The thought feels foreign, ugly. She pushes it away. Come on, Maximus, let's get you home. They slip out the back entrance, avoiding. The police vehicle's still parked out front. Destiny pulls her hood up. Not out of shame, but a learned caution from years of unwanted attention. Invisible is safer. The morning sun offers little warmth as they start their journey north, the Chicago skyline a glittering mirage in the distance. Maximus trots beside her, occasionally looking up as if checking that they're heading in the right direction. For a moment, Destiny feels a pang of anticipated loss. By tonight, this creature who trusted her so completely would be gone from her life. Another fleeting connection in a world where nothing good seems permanent. She squares her shoulders against this thought and walks faster. The path ahead is long and uncertain. But Destiny Williams has never been one to abandon responsibility, no matter how heavy the burden or unclear the road. The boundary between neighborhoods materializes like an invisible wall. Concrete gives way to tree-lined streets, bullet-riddled stop signs replaced by pristine traffic lights. Destiny clutches her found sign tighter as she and Maximus navigate this transition zone where Southside poverty bleeds into middle-class aspirations. They pass Franklin, community college where students lounge on manicured lawns, a stark contrast to the dirt patches surrounding Blackwood Gardens. Destiny pauses, watching young adults with backpacks and possibilities. One day, she thinks, one day that will be me. The thought feels simultaneously within reach and impossibly distant. Bus stops become more frequent, sheltered, and clean, unlike the graffitied metal posts in her neighborhood. When the first bus rumbles to a stop, Destiny counts out exact fare from her emergency money, climbing aboard with Maximus. Dogs need to be in carriers, the driver says, not unkindly. Destiny fumbles for words. I'm returning him to his owner. He was lost. A middle-aged woman in nurse's scrubs intervenes. Let them ride, Hector. Girl's doing a good deed. The driver sighs, waving them on. Destiny slides into a seat near the back, Maximus at her feet. Through the window, Chicago transforms. Buildings grow taller, storefronts more polished. She spots a grocery store with fruit stands outside, plump, fresh produce, unlike the bruised offerings at Mr. Lee's corner market. 2 transfers later, they enter North Shore territory. Here, even the air feels different, cleaner, carrying scents. Off freshly cut grass and flowering trees instead of exhaust and uncollected garbage. Houses set back from the street boast actual yards. Wrought iron fences replace chain link and razor wire. A strange feeling settles in Destiny's stomach. Not quite envy, something more complex. She's entered a world designed for ease and comfort, where daily survival isn't the primary occupation. Children younger than her play unsupervised in front yards. Teens travel in laughing packs without the hypervigilance that Destiny's peers wear like A-second skin. Lakeshore Drive stretches before them, the vast blue of Lake Michigan shimmering beyond mansions that seem to touch the sky. Destiny stops, momentarily, overwhelmed by the scale of wealth on display. These aren't just houses, they're monuments to prosperity, physical manifestations of a divide she navigates daily in more abstract ways. We're out of place here, she whispers to Maximus, who surprisingly seems more animated, his tail wagging as if recognizing familiar territory. As they approach the address, walking past homes with circular driveways and fountains, Destiny becomes acutely aware of her appearance. Worn sneakers, patched jeans, the careful mending on her hoodie sleeve where she caught it on a nail last month. Her hand-drawn found sign suddenly seems childish and inadequate. Hey, what are you doing with that dog? The sharp voice startles Destiny. A security guard approaches from a vehicle marked North Shore Community Patrol. Officer Reynolds, according to his nameplate, regards her with suspicion, hand resting casually near his taser. I found him, Destiny explains, displaying her sign. I'm taking him home. His tag has this address. Reynolds studies her, skepticism evident. Let me see that collar. As he bends to inspect Maximus, another figure approaches. An elderly man, walking a perfectly groomed poodle. Harold Jenkins, 73, wears pressed khakis and a sweater tied around his shoulders despite the warm day. Everything all right, Reynolds? Jenkins asks, his cultured voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to being heard. Just checking on this situation, Mr. Jenkins. Girl says she found this dog. Jenkins turns kind eyes toward Destiny. That's Maxwell Anderson's retriever, no doubt about it. Been missing 3 days now. The whole neighborhood's been looking. Maxwell Anderson, Destiny repeats, recognizing the name from news articles and the very scholarship foundation that rejected her. Maxwell Anderson, tech innovator and Chicago's newest billionaire. Jenkins smiles. Lives in that white mansion at the end of the drive. Been beside himself about Maximus. Offering a substantial reward too. The mention of a reward makes Destiny uncomfortable. I just want to return him to his family. Officer Reynolds straightens, his demeanor softening slightly. I'll escort you there. As they walk, Jenkins falls into step beside them, his poodle sniffing curiously at Maximus. I'm Harold, by the way. Been in this neighborhood 40 years. Watched it transform from merely wealthy to obscenely so. He chuckles. And you are? Destiny Williams, sir. From Blackwood Gardens. Southside. Jenkins nods, no judgment in his tone. Long journey for a young lady. Quite admirable. They're joined by Sophia Parker, a black woman in her 40s wearing a tailored business suit, emerging from a sleek electric car. Is that Maximus? Oh my goodness. This young lady found him, Jenkins explains. Sophia's warm, brown eyes meet Destiny's. I'm Maxwell's chief operating officer. He's been absolutely distraught. Printing flyers, hiring search teams. She pauses, something registering as she takes in Destiny's appearance. You came all this way to return him? Before Destiny can answer, a sleek black car pulls into the driveway ahead. A tall man emerges. Maxwell Anderson, himself, 58. His silver-streaked hair and casual business attire radiating authority without effort. Mr. Anderson, Sophia calls. Look who's been found. Maximus breaks free from Destiny's grasp, bounding toward his owner with joyful barks. The reunion unfolds like a scene from a movie. Maxwell kneeling, embracing his dog, relief washing over his features. When he looks up, his eyes lock with Destiny's across the expanse of his circular driveway. Recognition flickers, not of her, specifically, but of what she represents. A world far removed from his own. You found him? Maxwell asks, approaching with Maximus at his side. Yes, sir, behind my building. Destiny stands straighter, fighting the urge to shrink under his gaze. And you brought him all this way? Alone? Officer Reynolds interjects. I was just verifying her story, Mr. Anderson. Something shifts in Maxwell's expression. A mixture of gratitude and something deeper, more contemplative. What's your name? Destiny Williams. His brow furrows slightly, as if the name triggers something. Williams, I applied for your technology scholarship, she says, the words escaping before she can contain them. I wasn't selected. Charged silence follows, broken only by Maximus's happy panting. In this moment, standing at the threshold of wealth she's only imagined, Destiny feels the weight of crossed boundaries, physical, social, economic. She's traveled miles through Chicago's divided landscape, and now stands face to face with the very embodiment of opportunity that has repeatedly remained just beyond her reach. Maxwell Anderson's expansive home office feels larger than Destiny's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook Lake Michigan, the water sparkling like scattered diamonds in the afternoon sun. Destiny perches uncomfortably on a leather chair worth more than everything her family owns. Maximus contentedly curled at her feet. Hot. Chocolate? Eleanor, Maxwell's housekeeper, places a steaming mug before Destiny. The woman's gentle Caribbean accent reminds Destiny of Ms. Thomas from the third floor, who sometimes watches the younger children when parents work late shifts. Thank you, Mom, Destiny replies, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic, noticing the tiny marshmallows floating on top, a small luxury she rarely experiences. Maxwell enters, having changed from his business attire into more casual clothes, though his casual still screams expense. He settles behind his desk, studying Destiny with newfound interest. You mentioned the Harrington Technology Scholarship, he begins. Tell me about your application. Destiny shifts, uncomfortable with self-promotion. I developed an algorithm to predict asthma attacks based on environmental factors. Our neighborhood has high rates because of the industrial zone nearby. Maxwell's eyebrows rise. That's remarkably sophisticated for someone your age. Necessity inspires innovation, sir, she responds, echoing her science teacher's words. A smile touches Maxwell's lips. Indeed it does. He taps his keyboard, bringing up a database. Williams, Destiny. Ah, here you are. His eyes scan the screen. Perfect academic record, glowing recommendations, innovative project. Hef rounds. You should have been selected. Destiny's heart skips. The rejection. Letter said, I know what it said. Maxwell's voice hardens. I don't personally review each application. That's why I hire a committee. He makes a note. I'd like to know why you were overlooked. The door opens as Sophia enters, now carrying a tablet. The car service is arranged to take Destiny home, and I've prepared the reward check as discussed. I don't want a reward, Destiny blurts out. I just wanted to do the right thing. Maxwell and Sophia exchange glances. Principles over profit, Maxwell muses. Refreshing. He leans forward. Nevertheless, you've done me a great service. Maximus isn't just a pet, he was my late wife's companion. When Caroline died last year, he became my connection to her. The I. Revelation shifts something in the atmosphere. A shared understanding of loss. Victor Harrington enters without knocking, his tailored suit and imperious demeanor commanding attention. Immediately. At 65, the silver-haired executive exudes cold authority. Maxwell, the board meeting started 15 minutes ago. Everyone's waiting. His gaze lands on Destiny, dismissive. Who's this? The young lady who found Maximus, Maxwell explains, standing. Destiny Williams. Victor barely acknowledges her. Wonderful. Give her the reward so we can get back to business. The Singapore investors won't wait forever. Destiny feels herself shrinking under Victor's gaze, familiar with that particular brand of looking without seeing that many adults direct toward children, especially children from her neighborhood. Destiny was just telling me about her remarkable algorithm, Maxwell continues, seemingly oblivious to Victor's impatience. She applied for our scholarship program. Victor's phone chimes. He glances at it, then back at Maxwell. The scholarship. Selections were finalized months ago. We can't revisit every rejected application because some kid did you a favor. The words land like slaps. Destiny stares at her hot chocolate, wishing she could disappear. Actually, Sophia interjects, tablet in hand. I've just reviewed her file. Her project score was among the highest submitted. She meets Victor's eyes directly. Curious that she wasn't selected. Victor stiffens. We consider many factors beyond project scores, like postal codes. Sophia's question hangs in the air, pointed and provocative. Maxwell clears his throat. Victor, please inform the board I'll be delayed. Ms. Parker and I need to discuss something with our young guest. Victor's jaw tightens, but he nods curtly and exits, not before casting a cold glance at Destiny. You'll have to excuse Mr. Harrington, Maxwell says once the door closes. His vision for the foundation sometimes differs from mine. He's the one who reviews scholarship applications, Sophia explains, her tone careful. I've had concerns about his selection criteria for some time. The implication isn't lost on Destiny. She's experienced enough systemic barriers to recognize another when it presents itself. Eleanor returns with a tray of sandwiches. You must be hungry after your journey, child. Destiny hesitates before accepting, suddenly aware of her empty stomach. As she takes a careful bite, she notices Maxwell studying her with an expression she can't quite interpret. Something between curiosity and recognition. Tell me more about your grandmother, he says unexpectedly. She works at Mercy Hospital. Cleaning staff, Destiny answers, pride mixing with defensiveness. She raised me since I was 4. And your parents? My father left before I was born. My mother. Destiny pauses, the familiar pain resurfacing. She struggled with addiction. Passed when I was 4. Maxwell nods, something personal flickering across his features. My wife Caroline ran our Foundation's outreach programs. She was passionate about finding talent in overlooked places. He glances at Sophia. Perhaps that's why certain applications have been redirected since her passing. Sophia's expression confirms his suspicion. I'd like to offer you something more valuable than a reward check, Maxwell says suddenly. An opportunity. Destiny looks up, cautious but intrigued. Our Summer Coding Institute starts next week. 10 weeks of intensive training, mentorship, and project development. Maxwell leans forward. It's normally reserved for scholarship recipients, but I'd like to offer you a spot. Destiny's breath catches. But Mr. Harrington, Victor doesn't make every decision around here despite what he believes. Maxwell smiles, a hint of steel beneath the warmth. As the founder, I retain certain privileges. Destiny's mind races through practical concerns. It's across town. The transportation costs alone. We provide transportation and a stipend, Sophia explains, plus meals during program hours. And Maximus seems quite taken with you, Maxwell adds, watching his dog still resting contentedly at Destiny's feet. He has excellent judgment of character, something I've learned to trust. Hope, dangerous, fragile hope, begins to bloom in Destiny's chest. She thinks of her cramped room with its milk crate bookshelf, the astronomy books where she escapes, her makeshift science equipment cobbled together from discarded items. What could she accomplish with actual resources? I'd need to discuss it with my grandmother, she says carefully. Of course, Maxwell nods. In fact, I'd like to meet her. Perhaps I could join you when the car takes you home. The suggestion sends a jolt of panic through Destiny. The idea of this billionaire seeing her reality, the broken elevator, the water, stains on their ceiling, the shared bathroom down the hall when their plumbing acts up, fills her with complex emotions. Our place is nothing special, she manages. Neither was mine, growing up, Maxwell says quietly. My father worked 3 jobs. Our apartment in Cabrini Green was condemned when I was 15. Destiny stares, disbelief evident. You grew up in the projects? Before they were demolished? Yes. His smile holds no shame. People see the mansion and assume I was born into privilege. Sophia checks her watch. The board is waiting, Maxwell. He nods. Sophia will arrange everything. To Destiny. Consider my offer. This could be the beginning of something significant. As Maxwell leaves for his meeting, Sophia sits beside Destiny. He doesn't share his background often, she says. Your journey today, it resonated with him. Destiny pets Maximus absently, mind swirling with possibilities. Why would he help me? Because someone once helped him, Sophia answers simply. And because talent like yours deserves nurturing, not barriers. The scholarship rejection letter seems suddenly less final, its weight in her pocket lighter. For the first time since finding Maximus, Destiny allows herself to consider that perhaps this detour from her planned Saturday might lead somewhere unexpected. Not just returning a lost dog, but finding a path forward she couldn't have imagined. Maximus nudges her hand with his nose, his warm brown eyes seeming to encourage her forward. In this creature's unconditional acceptance, in Maxwell's unexpected offer, in Sophia's supportive presence, Destiny senses the first fragile threads of connection forming across worlds that normally remain rigidly separated by invisible but powerful boundaries. The sleek, black car glides through Chicago's changing landscapes, traversing the economic gradient that divides the city. Destiny watches through tinted windows as manicured lawns give way to concrete, pristine storefronts to barred windows and liquor advertisements. Maxwell sits opposite her, Maximus between them, observing the transformation with thoughtful eyes. Your driver can drop me at the corner, Destiny suggests as they approach Blackwood Gardens. The last thing she needs is to arrive in a vehicle that screams money, drawing unwanted attention. Nonsense, Maxwell replies. I'd like to meet your grandmother properly. As the car slows near her building, reality crashes back. Police cruisers still line the street. The morning's drug bust, violently ongoing. Yellow tape cordons off building. C. Uniformed officers questioning residents. Among them, Destiny spots Jamal's older brother being handcuffed, his mother pleading nearby. Maybe today isn't good, Destiny says quickly. Maxwell follows her gaze, understanding dawning. This happens often? Often enough. Officer Diaz approaches their vehicle as it stops, hand resting on his holster. This area's restricted today. You'll need to move along. The driver lowers his window. Mr. Anderson is dropping off a resident. Recognition flashes across Diaz's face as he peers in, seeing Maxwell. Mr. Anderson? The tech CEO. Maxwell nods politely. This young lady lives here. She's returning home after helping me with a personal matter. Diaz's attention shifts to Destiny, then back to Maxwell, suspicion evident. She lives in Building A or B? Building A, Destiny answers, tension coiling in her stomach. She knows how this looks. A wealthy white man bringing a young black girl to the projects. The assumptions are inevitable and dangerous. 4th floor, she adds. My grandmother is Mabel Williams. She works at Mercy Hospital. At the mention of Mabel, Diaz's expression softens slightly. Ms. Williams. She helped when my partner got injured last year. Good woman. He steps back. You can proceed, but be aware there's an operation in progress. As they exit the car, more obstacles materialize. Mrs. Green, the building's nosiest resident, watches from her ground floor window, phone already to her ear. Darnell and his crew loiter near the entrance. They're evaluating stairs, following Maxwell's expensive shoes. The car, Destiny's proximity to wealth. Little D got herself a sugar daddy, Darnell calls out, his words deliberately provocative. Destiny feels her cheeks burn with humiliation and anger. He's my dog's owner, she responds, immediately regretting the possessive pronoun. Maxwell doesn't react to the taunt, instead placing a gentle hand on Destiny's shoulder. Lead the way, he says quietly. The broken elevator presents the next challenge. 4 flights of stairs in a stairwell reeking of urine and marijuana. Maxwell says nothing, following Destiny's lead without complaint. On the 3rd floor landing, they encounter Mr. Washington, Destiny's elderly neighbor, struggling with groceries. Let me help you with those, sir, Maxwell offers, taking the heaviest bags. Mr. Washington's surprise is evident. Appreciate it, brother. Elevator's been out 3 months now. Management keeps saying next week, next week. That seems like a violation of housing codes, Maxwell comments, falling into step beside the older man. Oh, violations are plenty here, Mr. Washington chuckles without humor. But who's counting anymore? By the time they reach the 4th floor, Destiny's anxiety has peaked. The narrow hallway with its flickering lights, the water stains spreading. Across the ceiling, the mismatched doors with multiple locks, all aspects of home she normally doesn't question, now seem shameful through an outsider's eyes. Outside their apartment, Destiny hesitates. It's small. she warns. Maxwell meets her gaze. Destiny, I've been where you are. Nothing about your home will shock or disappoint me. The door opens before Destiny can use her key. Mabel stands there, worry instantly transforming to confusion, at the sight of her granddaughter accompanied by a stranger and a dog. Child, I've been calling that phone for hours. Relief and anger compete in her voice. Who is this man? While Destiny makes hurried introductions, Marcus appears in the hallway, his expression urgent. Destiny, police are checking apartments for connections to Building C. They're heading this way. The information sends a wave of panic through Mabel. We ain't got nothing to do with that business, she says firmly, but fear edges her voice. They're not discriminating today, Marcus warns. And now you've got... He gestures vaguely toward Maxwell, the implication clear. An unexpected rich white visitor raises questions they don't need. Inside the apartment, Maximus growls low as sounds of heavy boots and authoritative voices echo from down the hall. I should go, Maxwell says, understanding immediately. My presence is complicating things. Too late, Marcus mutters, glancing toward the approaching officers. Mabel straightens her spine, dignity overriding fear. Mr. Anderson, I apologize for the welcome, but perhaps you could explain to these officers that you're here as our guest. The simple request carries the weight of years of unjust scrutiny, of guilty until proven innocent interactions with authority. Maxwell nods, comprehension in his eyes. Of course. But before the officers reach their door, another complication emerges. Victor Harrington appears at the end of the hallway, his expensive suit absurdly out of place in Blackwood Gardens. Maxwell! There you are. The Singapore call cannot proceed without you. His gaze sweeps the surroundings with poorly disguised distaste. Victor? How did you find me? Maxwell asks, genuine surprise in his voice. Your car has GPS tracking for security reasons, remember? The board sent me to retrieve you when you missed the call. Victor approaches, lowering his voice. What are you doing in this place? The approaching officers pause, taking in the unexpected tableau of wealthy executives in the project hallway. Everything all right here? Sergeant Miller asks, hand resting casually near his weapon. Perfectly fine, Maxwell responds smoothly. I'm visiting the family of a young lady who helped me today. Victor, these are Destiny's grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Williams. Grandmother, Mabel corrects quietly. Just me. Raising her. Victor's expression remains cold. Maxwell, the investors are waiting. Whatever charitable impulse brought you here can surely wait for a more appropriate time. Maximus, sensing the tension, positions himself protectively beside Destiny. The officers notice the dog, exchanging glances. No pets allowed in this building. Miller comments, seizing on the infraction. He's not staying, Destiny quickly explains. I found him lost and was returning him to Mr. Anderson. And now I'll be taking him and leaving, Maxwell adds, recognizing the escalating situation. He turns to Mabel. Mrs. Williams, I apologize for the disruption. I'd still like to discuss Destiny's opportunity with you. Perhaps at your workplace, tomorrow. Mabel's confusion is evident, but she nods. I'm on shift at Mercy from 7 to 3. Perfect. I'll come by at noon. Victor's impatience manifests in a dramatic check of his watch. Maxwell, the call can be rescheduled, Maxwell finishes firmly. To the officers. Gentlemen, we were just leaving. I assume there's no issue with that. The authority in his tone, the expensive clothes, the immediate deference these trappings of wealth command, all work their silent magic. The officers step aside. No issue, sir. Just routine checks today. As they navigate back toward the stairwell, Maxwell hangs back briefly to press a business card into Destiny's hand. My private number, he murmurs. Call if there's any trouble after we leave. Destiny nods, watching as Maxwell, Victor and Maximus descend the stairs, leaving her once again in her reality, but with a small rectangle of possibility clutched in her palm. Back in the apartment, Mabel collapses into their worn armchair. Child, you better explain everything right now. A billionaire and his fancy dog, police at our door. What have you gotten yourself into? As Destiny begins her explanation, another knock sounds at their door. Marcus peers in, his expression grim. They're searching apartments down the hall, looking for connections to the dealers in C. We got nothing to hide, Mabel insists. Marcus hesitates. They found prescription meds in Jamal's brother's place, not his. Now they're checking everyone. Destiny and Mabel exchange alarmed glances. On the kitchen counter sits Mabel's arthritis medication, prescribed but expensive, leading her to occasionally accept a few pills from Ms. Ortiz when insurance delays create gaps. Technically illegal, practically necessary in a system that often forces such compromises. What opportunity was that man talking about? Mabel asks, gathering the medication with shaking hands. A coding program. For the summer, Destiny explains, the excitement of possibility now dimmed by immediate concerns. But that doesn't matter right now. Another knock, more authoritative this time. The challenges that seemed surmountable hours ago. Transportation across Chicago. Victor's resistance. The cultural divide. Now pale compared to the immediate threat to their stability and safety. The opportunity Maxwell offered seemed suddenly distant, a mirage shimmering beyond more pressing obstacles. Destiny takes a deep breath, squaring her shoulders as Mabel moves to answer the door. In returning Maximus, she had crossed physical boundaries of the city. Now those boundaries were pushing back, reminding her of her place with brutal efficiency. Night settles over Blackwood Gardens, the earlier police presence now gone, leaving behind a residue of tension and whispered conversations. Destiny sits on the fire escape outside their apartment window, her makeshift sanctuary, when the walls feel too close. The city sprawls before her, distant skyscrapers illuminated against the darkening sky, North Shore somewhere beyond. A world, briefly touched and retreated from. The search of their apartment had been perfunctory, the officers losing interest when nothing immediately suspicious presented itself. Mabel had hidden her medication just in time, but the violation of their space, the unspoken assumption of guilt, these hung in the air long after the police departed. Destiny pulls Maxwell's business card from her pocket, tracing the embossed lettering with her fingertip. The day's events replay in her mind like scenes from someone else's life. Finding Maximus, the journey across Chicago's divided landscape, standing in Maxwell Anderson's office, his unexpected offer, the complications of his visit to Blackwood Gardens. "What am I doing?" she whispers to the night air. "Playing with fire." The community's unwritten rules are clear. Don't draw attention, don't invite outsiders, don't reach beyond your assigned place. Yet something about Maxwell's recognition of her potential, of her work, something about being seen, awakens a hunger she's long suppressed beneath pragmatism and daily survival. From her backpack, Destiny retrieves her notebook. Inside, algorithmic formulations and coding notes fill pages, alongside sketches for apps designed to address community needs. A real-time alert system for asthma risk based on air quality readings. A resource-sharing platform for families in food deserts. Ideas born from necessity, refined through observation and the limited knowledge gleaned from borrowed textbooks and library computers with time restrictions. What might she create with actual resources? With mentors who understand both the technology and its applications? With peers who could challenge and enhance her thinking? The coding institute Maxwell offered represents more than educational opportunity. It's a doorway to possibility. Yet the day's events have exposed the chasm between desire and reality. Even if Maxwell keeps his word, even if a place awaits her, how can she navigate these separate worlds? Today's collision between North Shore wealth and Blackwood Gardens reality demonstrated the dangers of crossing boundaries. Inside the apartment, she hears Mabel on the phone, voice low but strained. "No, we're fine. Police didn't find nothing. Yes, that rich man really came here. I don't know what he wants with Destiny. Some program, he said." The conversation is with Aunt Patricia, Mabel's younger sister, who moved to Atlanta years ago, always quick to offer opinions on Destiny's raising from a safe distance. Patricia, who consistently suggests Destiny aim realistically, who believes ambition beyond certain boundaries invites heartbreak. Destiny closes her notebook, sudden tears pricking her eyes. The frustration rises, not just at external barriers, but at her own conflicted feelings. Why does opportunity feel simultaneously like betrayal? Why does the excitement about Maxwell's program carry undertones of guilt, as if wanting more somehow disrespects those who raised her in this place? Mrs. Thomas from down the hall had stopped by after the police left, concern masked as casual visiting. "Be careful with those North Shore types," she'd warned. "They get interested in smart kids from the neighborhood sometimes. Use you for their charity, stories, their tax write-offs, then move on." The warning echoes against Maxwell's apparent sincerity. His mention of his own Cabrini Green childhood. Was that truth or calculated manipulation? How can she possibly know? Destiny pulls out her phone, thumb hovering over the search icon. She types Maxwell Anderson background and waits as results load slowly on the building's shared Wi-Fi. Articles appear, business profiles, interviews, philanthropic initiatives. She skims through several before finding one with biographical details. Born 1966, raised in Chicago's Cabrini Green housing project, scholarship to Illinois Tech, startup success in the early internet boom. The broad strokes match his claims, but doubt still lingers. People reinvent themselves, curate narratives. The Maxwell, who arrived in a luxury car with a purebred dog, seems worlds away from public housing origins, regardless of what articles claim. More troubling are the sparse mentions of the Harrington Technology Scholarship, named for Victor Harrington's financial backing, but supposedly reflecting Maxwell's vision for discovering untapped talent. If that's true, how had her application been rejected? Victor's cold dismissal replays in her mind, the barely concealed contempt, the impatience with Maxwell's interest in her. Two sides of the same coin, she murmurs, uncertainty clouding her earlier hope. Morning brings no clarity. Destiny helps Mabel prepare for her hospital shift. The routine familiar, but now underscored with new tension. He said he'd come see you at work today, Destiny reminds her grandmother. Mabel adjusts her uniform, practical blue scrubs worn thin from countless washings. And what am I supposed to say, toe billionaire? Yes, take my grandbaby to your fancy program so she can see how the other half lives. Then come back to all this? The words sting with their accuracy. It's just a summer program, Grandma. It's never just anything, child. Mabel sits heavily at their small table. You cross those lines, it changes how you see everything, makes coming back harder. I wouldn't change, Destiny insists. Not saying you would. Saying it would hurt more, knowing what else is out there. The simple truth silences Destiny. Isn't that already happening? Hasn't seeing Maxwell's world, even briefly, shifted something? In how she views Blackwood Gardens? What if it's my only chance? She asks finally, vulnerability cracking through her usual composure. Mabel sighs, reaching for Destiny's hand. That's what scares me most. That you deserve every opportunity, but this world isn't set up to give them to you. That you'll get your hopes up, and that man will disappear like morning dew once his guilty conscience is satisfied. He seems sincere. Rich. Folks always do, baby. They believe their own good intentions right up until following through becomes inconvenient. From outside comes the sound of breaking glass, followed by shouts. Another day beginning in Blackwood Gardens. Destiny winces, newly conscious of her surroundings through imagined outside eyes. Her phone buzzes with a text from Jamal. You're rich. Friends still coming around. Brother got released, but they took our uncle in. Place is hot right now. The message heightens her uncertainty. Maxwell entering this complex environment, potentially drawing more unwanted attention. The risk to her family's stability, the questions from neighbors, the scrutiny from authorities. Is any opportunity worth these complications? I don't know. What to do, she admits, the weight of decision pressing down. What if I say no and always wonder? What if I say yes and it all falls apart? Mabel gathers her things for work, determination replacing doubt. I'll hear what the man has to say, that's all I'm promising. As her grandmother leaves, Destiny retreats to their small bathroom, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The girl who looks back seems simultaneously older and younger than 12. Eyes that have witnessed too much, face still holding childhood's softness. Who are you trying to be? She asks her reflection. The question resonates beyond this moment, beyond the immediate decision about Maxwell's program. It cuts to her core identity, the balance between roots and aspirations, between loyalty to community and personal advancement, between the security of the familiar and the beckoning unknown. Her phone buzzes again. An unknown number. The message. Simple. This is Maxwell Anderson. Looking forward to meeting with your grandmother today. Maximus sends his regards. A photo accompanies the text. The golden retriever sprawled contentedly on what must be Maxwell's home office floor, seemingly at peace. Destiny's throat tightens with unexpected emotion. The connection to the dog feels strangely significant. A being that moved between worlds without judgment, who accepted her completely, despite their different origins. If only human boundaries were so easily crossed. She sets the phone down without responding, uncertainty swirling in her chest. The opportunity Maxwell offers glimmers like a distant lighthouse, promising guidance, direction, possibility. But lighthouses also mark dangerous shores, warning as much as welcoming. Destiny returns to the fire escape, gazing out at Chicago's divided landscape. The city exists as adjacent realities, privilege and poverty, opportunity and limitation, separated by invisible but powerful boundaries she'd crossed for a single day. Now, straddling these worlds, She feels the painful stretch of expanded awareness, knowing what might be possible while surrounded by constraints that have always defined her existence. In returning a lost dog, she's found herself suddenly lost between worlds, uncertain where she truly belongs. Mercy Hospital's cafeteria buzzes with controlled chaos. Nurses grabbing quick lunches, patients' families huddled over coffee cups, hospital staff moving with the efficiency of those whose breaks are precisely timed. Destiny sits at a corner table, textbook open but unread, watching the entrance. She'd decided to meet her grandmother here rather than wait anxiously at home. Better to witness the conversation with Maxwell firsthand than rely on Mabel's interpretation, which would inevitably be filtered through protective caution. At exactly noon, Maxwell appears. Unlike yesterday's business attire, he wears casual clothes, jeans and a simple button-down that wouldn't draw attention in this setting. No assistant accompanies him, no security detail. He scans the cafeteria until his gaze finds Destiny, surprise registering briefly before he smiles and approaches. "I didn't expect to see you here," he says, sliding into the seat across from her. "Grandma's on lunch at 12:30, Destiny explains. "I wanted to, I don't know, make sure everything went okay." Maxwell nods, understanding her unstated concerns. "I imagine yesterday left you with questions." "More like doubts," she admits. "Understandable." He glances around the cafeteria. "I spent a lot of time in hospitals as a kid. My mother was often sick. Lupus. Hospitals always feel familiar to me." The casual confidence of his tone suggests truth rather than calculated manipulation. But Destiny remains cautious. "I looked you up," she says. "Articles say you grew up in Cabrini Green." "I did." He meets her gaze directly. 2340 North Clybourne Avenue, Building D, Apartment 1107. From ages 7 to 15, until they tore it down in the early 80s. Before that, we lived in Humboldt Park. The specific details carry the weight of lived experience. Destiny's doubt softens slightly. "Why did you really come to our apartment yesterday?" she asks. "You could have sent a car for me, given me the information about the program without coming yourself." Maxwell considers the question. "Honestly, because I've been insulated for too long." He leans forward. "When I started the foundation, I was hands-on. Visited schools, talked to students, saw the conditions firsthand. Over time, I delegated more, trusted others to implement my vision." He sighs. "Yesterday was a wake-up call. Victor selecting scholarship recipients using criteria I never approved. Discrimination," Destiny says flatly. "Yes," Maxwell acknowledges, though he'd call it practical considerations or cultural fit assessment. Beautiful language disguising ugly intentions. Before Destiny can respond, Mabel approaches, still in her blue custodial uniform. She regards Maxwell with cautious neutrality. "Mr. Anderson." Maxwell stands, extending his hand. "Mrs. Williams, thank you for meeting with me." Mabel's handshake is brief but firm. "My lunch break is 30 minutes. Let's not waste time with pleasantries." They settle at the table, Mabel's practical directness contrasting with Maxwell's measured courtesy. Destiny watches their interaction, suddenly aware of sitting at the intersection of her past and possible future. "I'd like to offer Destiny a place in our Summer Coding Institute," Maxwell begins. "It's a 10-week program for exceptional students interested in technology careers. Transportation provided, meals included, plus a stipend to compensate for time that might otherwise be spent in summer employment." Mabel's expression remains carefully neutral. "And why my granddaughter specifically?" "Because she returned your dog. Because she should have been selected for our scholarship initially. Her application was exceptional. Yet she wasn't selected," Mabel notes. "Why is that?" Maxwell's jaw tightens slightly. "Because the selection process was compromised. Something I'm addressing immediately." Mabel studies him, decades of hard-earned skepticism evident in her gaze. "So this is what? Guilt? Damage control? Grandma?" Destiny begins, embarrassed by the directness. "No, she's right to question my motives," Maxwell interrupts. "Mrs. Williams, this isn't about guilt or public relations. It's about recognizing talent and potential that shouldn't be wasted. Your granddaughter developed an algorithm that our professional evaluation team ranked among the top submissions they'd ever seen, from a student of any age." Destiny blinks in surprise. "They did?" "The technical assessors, yes. They don't see demographics, just blind-coded submissions." Maxwell's gaze shifts between them. The program could open doors for Destiny, college scholarships, industry connections, mentorships. Mabel remains unmoved. "Doors open both ways, Mr. Anderson. What happens when summer ends and those doors close again? When she returns to Blackwood Gardens with a head full of possibilities, but the same limitations? The question strikes at Destiny's own unspoken fears. Maxwell doesn't immediately answer, considering the challenges seriously. That's a fair concern, he finally acknowledges. I don't have a perfect answer. What I can tell you is that genuine talent, once developed and connected to opportunity, tends to create its own pathways. A custodial supervisor appears at the edge of the cafeteria, gesturing impatiently for Mabel. Her break is ending. I have to get back, she says, standing. Luxury of time is something we don't have in my position, Mr. Anderson. I understand, Maxwell responds. But before you go, may I tell you something about your granddaughter that you might not know? Mabel pauses, curiosity overcoming haste. The asthma prediction algorithm she developed for her application, if properly implemented, it could potentially save lives in communities like yours, where environmental factors trigger higher rates of respiratory distress. His voice carries quiet intensity. That's not just academic potential, Mrs. Williams. That's the power to create tangible change. Something shifts in Mabel's expression, a flicker of pride breaking through caution. Destiny never told me the details, she says softly. Just that she'd applied for some technology thing. She's exceptional, Maxwell states simply. I'd like to help her develop that potential, not exploit it. The supervisor gestures more insistently. Mabel straightens her uniform. I need to think, she says. This isn't a decision to rush. As she turns to leave, a commotion erupts near the cafeteria entrance. Diana Anderson, Maxwell's 25-year-old daughter, strides in, her designer, clothes and imperious manner drawing attention. Behind her, Sophia hurries to keep pace. Dad! There you are! Diana's voice carries across the space. Victor said you were doing some charity case visit, but seriously, skipping the Millington Foundation. Meeting for this, Maxwell's expression tightens. Diana, this is unexpected. Diana reaches their table, barely glancing at Destiny or Mabel. The board is in crisis mode. Victor's threatening to withdraw his funding if you continue undermining his authority on scholarship selections. Sophia catches up, apologetic. I'm sorry, Maxwell. She insisted on coming when she heard about the situation. Diana continues, oblivious to the discomfort she's creating. Dad, you can't jeopardize the entire foundation over one rejection. What's so special about this particular? She finally focuses on Destiny, scrutiny in her gaze. Mrs. Williams. Destiny, this is my daughter, Diana, Maxwell says, tension evident in his forced politeness. Mabel nods curtly, the supervisor now walking toward them with obvious impatience. I need to go. Wait, Maxwell says, reaching for a napkin and quickly writing on it. My home address. Bring Destiny for dinner tonight. 7. We can discuss everything properly without time constraints. Mabel takes the napkin reflexively. Mr. Anderson, please, he says quietly. Before you decide, let me show you the full picture of what this opportunity could mean. Diana watches the exchange with transparent disbelief. Dad, the Millingtons have been waiting 20 minutes. They can wait 20 more. Maxwell responds sharply. To Mabel, no pressure. Just dinner and conversation. Mabel tucks the napkin into her pocket before hurrying away, the supervisor already launching into reprimands about break time violations. Left at the table with Maxwell, Diana, and Sophia, Destiny feels suddenly diminished, a project being discussed rather than a person with agency. This is her, Diana asks, making no effort to hide her skepticism. The reason you're risking Victor's support? Diana, Maxwell warns. But Diana continues, addressing Destiny directly for the first time. Do you have any idea what's at stake here? The Foundation funds programs for hundreds of students. Victor's threatening to pull millions in funding because my father's suddenly fixated on your rejection. That's enough. Maxwell interrupts firmly. Sophia places a gentle hand on Destiny's shoulder. Why don't I take you home? Your grandmother can meet us there after her shift. Destiny shakes her head, finding her voice. I can get home myself. At least let me drive you, Sophia offers. I take the bus every day, Destiny responds, gathering her textbook. The contrast between Diana's entitled incredulity and her own reality crystallizes something within her, a determination to be seen as equal rather than charity. Maxwell starts to speak, but his phone buzzes with what must be another urgent message, the demands of his world pulling at him even as he tries to bridge into hers. Destiny, please, he begins. It's fine, she interrupts, surprising herself with her firmness. You have meetings. I have a bus to catch. The revelation unfolds not in a single dramatic moment, but through the accumulation of contrasts. Diana's casual dismissal of charity cases, the supervisor's reprimand of Mabel for taking an extra 2 minutes of break time, Maxwell's genuine concern competing with the responsibilities of his position. Destiny walks from the hospital, declining Sophia's repeated offers of transportation. The spring afternoon feels different somehow, the city both more familiar and more foreign after glimpsing its disparate realities. Near the bus stop, she spots a community garden wedged between buildings, raised beds of vegetables tended by neighborhood residents, beauty cultivated in unlikely circumstances. She pauses, watching an elderly woman carefully watering seedlings. The sight crystallizes something within her, a metaphor for possibility amid constraint, for nurturing potential regardless of surroundings. Her phone buzzes with a text from Mabel, going to hear what the man has to say tonight. Your choice if you want to come. The simple message represents a significant shift. Mabel, deeply protective and inherently suspicious of outside intervention, is willing to listen further. Something in Maxwell's words about Destiny's potential had penetrated her caution. Another text arrives, this one from Maxwell. I apologize for my daughter's behavior. She doesn't understand yet. But Ido, your choice matters most here. Destiny boards the bus, finding a seat by the window. As the vehicle traverses Chicago's economic gradient, she watches the changing landscape with new awareness. The city has always been divided, but now she's experienced both sides, felt the boundaries between them. More importantly, she's glimpsed the possibility of movement between worlds. The revelation isn't about Maxwell's offer specifically, though that remains significant. It's deeper, an understanding that the borders containing her life are both real and constructed, both physical and psychological. Her algorithm had impressed professionals. Her potential had been recognized by someone with the power to nurture it. The barriers she'd accepted as permanent might actually be permeable. By the time she reaches Blackwood Gardens, Destiny's perspective has shifted fundamentally. The buildings haven't changed, the broken elevator and graffitied walls remain the same, but she sees beyond current circumstances to possible futures. In her room, she retrieves her notebook, flipping through pages of code and calculations. The asthma prediction algorithm had begun as a practical response to her friend Tamika's frequent attacks, an attempt to warn her when conditions might trigger breathing difficulties. It had been personal, local, specific to needs she observed, daily. But what if it could be more? What if, with proper development and implementation, it could serve not just Tamika but others throughout neighborhoods like theirs, where environmental factors disproportionately impact health? Looking at her work with fresh eyes, Destiny begins to recognize that her solutions, born from necessity and limited resources, might hold value precisely because of their origins rather than despite them. She understands problems from the inside, that those with resources might only comprehend abstractly. She texts Jamal, going to Rich Guy's house for dinner tonight, with Grandma. His response is quick. For real? Watch yourself. Those North Shore types can smile while stabbing you in the back. The warning echoes her earlier doubts, but now feels less convincing, not because Maxwell has proven himself trustworthy, that remains to be seen, but because Destiny has begun to trust her own judgment, her own ability to navigate complex situations. She responds, I know, but maybe there's something worth learning there. As evening approaches, Destiny changes into her best clothes, a simple blue dress saved for church and special occasions, the inside that those with resources might only comprehend abstractly. She texts Jamal, going to Rich Guy's house for dinner tonight, with Grandma. His response is quick. For real? Watch yourself. Those North Shore types can smile while stabbing you in the back. The warning echoes her earlier doubts, but now feels less convincing. Not because Maxwell has proven himself trustworthy, that remains to be seen, but because Destiny has begun to trust her own judgment, her own ability to navigate complex situations. She responds, I know, but maybe there's something worth learning there. As evening approaches, Destiny changes into her best clothes, a simple blue dress saved for church and special occasions. In the bathroom mirror, she studies her reflection, noting the determination that has replaced uncertainty in her eyes. She's decided. She will go to dinner, will listen to what Maxwell has to offer, not with naive enthusiasm or cynical suspicion, but with clear-eyed evaluation of opportunity against risk, of potential benefit against possible disappointment. The journey of returning Maximus has become a journey of self-discovery, forcing Destiny to confront limitations she'd accepted and possibilities she had dismissed. Whether Maxwell's program, materializes or not, whether the foundation's doors truly open to her or not, something fundamental has changed. She will no longer define herself primarily by boundaries. She will define herself by potential, not just what she might become in some distant future, but what she already is, a creator of solutions, a bridge between worlds, a girl whose compassion for a lost dog led her across divisions most never traverse. Mabel calls from the living room. "Car's here, Destiny. You coming or staying?" Destiny takes one last look in the mirror, straightening her shoulders. "Coming," she answers, her voice steady with newfound resolve. "Definitely coming." Summer heat blanketed Chicago as Destiny stood in Blackwood Gardens' central courtyard, supervising the installation of the fifth air quality sensor. Maxwell had delivered on his promise, sending a technical team to implement the infrastructure needed for her algorithm. What had begun as a theoretical project was becoming tangible reality. "This one covers the northeast corner," explained Jordan, the lead technician. "With the network complete, you'll have real-time monitoring of the entire complex and surrounding blocks." Destiny nodded, checking the readings on her tablet. The interface she'd designed was simple enough for anyone to understand. Color-coded warnings that required minimal technical knowledge. Green for safe, yellow for caution, red for dangerous conditions. Tamika approached, her recent hospital stay still evident in the careful way she moved. "So, this thing's really going to tell us when it's bad to be outside." "That's the idea," Destiny confirmed. "The app will send alerts directly to people's phones." "Most folks here don't have fancy smartphones," Tamika pointed out. "I know. That's why we're also installing the warning lights." Destiny indicated the LED displays being mounted at key locations around the complex, and why the community center will have the main display panel. The project had evolved significantly over the past 2 weeks. What began as Destiny's personal coding exercise had transformed into a community initiative. Residents who initially viewed her with suspicion now stopped to ask questions, offer suggestions, even volunteer to help with the installation. Mabel arrived with a cooler of ice water for the workers. Her initial skepticism about Maxwell's commitment had gradually shifted to cautious optimism as promises materialized into action. "Ms. Ortiz wants to know if the sensor near her window needs special cleaning," she told Destiny. "Says the factory. Dust settles on everything over there." "Good question. I'll check with Jordan." Destiny made a note on her tablet. These practical considerations, maintenance in harsh conditions, durability against weather and vandalism, had refined her understanding of the gap between theory and implementation. Her phone buzzed with a message from Maxwell. "Board meeting complete. Unanimous approval for Community Partnership Program. You're officially our first Community Innovation Fellow. Details when you're back on campus tomorrow." The news sent a wave of excitement through her. The fellowship was a new classification she'd helped design, a recognition that innovation could flow from community to institution, not merely the reverse. It came with expanded resources and responsibilities, including a voice in future scholarship selections. "Good news?" Mabel asked, noting her expression. "Very good," Destiny confirmed. "The program changes we discussed are happening." Nearby, Jamal supervised a group of younger children who were helping paint the protective housing for one of the sensors. His initial distance had transformed into engagement once he understood Destiny wasn't leaving the community behind, but bringing resources to it. "Hey Dee," he called. "Think we could get one of these for the school too? Air gets bad in those classrooms. Already." "In the next phase," she replied. "Assuming this pilot works." The past weeks had taught Destiny the delicate balance between optimism and pragmatism. Maxwell's support remained strong, but institutional change moved slowly. Victor continued to create obstacles, questioning the return on investment for community-based initiatives. Each step forward required careful navigation of complex dynamics. What sustained her was the growing coalition of allies. Dr. Ramirez had become a fierce advocate, integrating community application requirements into the Institute's curriculum. Sophia leveraged her position to secure additional funding channels independent of Victor's influence. Tyler visited regularly, mentoring Destiny through both technical challenges and the social complexities of straddling different worlds. Most significantly, Maxwell had begun bringing board members to Blackwood Gardens, allowing them to see firsthand both the challenges and the innovative responses residents developed. These visits gradually shifted perceptions, transforming abstract urban problems into human stories and practical opportunities for meaningful intervention. As evening approached, Destiny gathered the technical team and community volunteers for a final briefing. Standing before this diverse group, corporate professionals alongside neighborhood residents, institute students beside local children. She felt a quiet confidence that had nothing to do with the coding skills she'd developed. Tomorrow, we activate the full network, she explained. The first week will be calibration mode, comparing our readings with official city data. Then we go live with alerts. She looked around the circle. This works because everyone contributed. Technical knowledge and community expertise together. Later, walking with Mabel back to their apartment, Destiny reflected on the transformation of the past weeks. Remember when I was afraid to have Maxwell see our building? Now he's had half his board of directors walking the same hallways. Mabel smiled. And remember when I thought he was just feeling guilty about his dog? Now he's putting actual resources into change. She squeezed Destiny's shoulder. I'm proud of you, child. You didn't just cross into their world, you brought a piece of it back with you. The observation captured what Destiny had come to understand. True empowerment wasn't about escaping one's circumstances, but about changing the dynamics that created those circumstances in the first place. The Coding Institute had given her technical tools, but her community had provided the purpose for using them. As they reached their apartment, Destiny paused to look back at the courtyard, where the day's work continued. The sensor network was just the beginning. Each small victory created foundation for the next. The path forward wasn't about leaving Blackwood Gardens behind, but transforming it through connection, resource, and recognition of the strength already present within its community. The annual Innovation Showcase filled the Institute's main hall with displays, nervous students, and evaluating judges. As the summer program's culminating event, it attracted technology industry representatives, potential investors, and media attention. This year, however, included a significant difference. Community members from implementation sites were present as well, including a delegation from Blackwood Gardens. Destiny stood beside her display, the central monitor showing real-time air quality readings from her neighborhood. After 6 weeks of operation, the system had already proven its value, with a documented 23% reduction in emergency room visits for respiratory issues. The key innovation isn't the sensors themselves, she explained to a group of visitors. It's the accessibility of the information and the community integration. Victor Harrington hovered at the edges of these presentations, his expression revealing his continued opposition to what he viewed as Maxwell's charitable distractions. Though formally removed from scholarship oversight, he retained significant influence with certain board members and investors. Impressive results, commented Elizabeth Chen, a venture capitalist examining Destiny's data. Have you considered wider application? That's our next phase, Destiny confirmed. We're creating an implementation toolkit for similar communities. Nearby, Tamika demonstrated the mobile app to other visitors, her personal story of how an alert had prevented another serious asthma attack, providing powerful testimony to the project's impact. Maxwell and Dr. Ramirez guided a group of potential funders through the showcase, strategically highlighting the combination of technical innovation and practical application that characterized the new direction of their programs. What we've learned, Maxwell explained, is that effective solutions require both technical expertise and lived experience. Our community innovation fellows bring critical perspectives that purely academic approaches often miss. The showcase represented the culmination of months of effort, but for Destiny, it also marked a turning point. The following week would bring decisions about ongoing support, potential expansion, and her own future connection to the Institute as the summer program concluded. Tension escalated when Victor approached her display during a quiet moment. Impressive marketing, he said, his tone making the words less than complimentary. Maxwell's always had a flair for the theatrical. The results speak for themselves, Destiny replied evenly, indicating the health outcome data. For a small test case, perhaps. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. But the broader technology investment community requires more substantive return metrics. Sentiment doesn't scale, Miss Williams. Before Destiny could respond, Mabel appeared, at her side. Unlike earlier encounters where she might have been intimidated by Victor's status, she now faced him with the confidence of someone who understood the value of her community's contribution. Those sentiment numbers represent real children breathing easier, Mr. Harrington. My neighbors sleeping through the night instead of rushing to emergency rooms. Her voice carried quiet authority. If that doesn't qualify as substantive return, perhaps you're measuring the wrong things. Victor's expression tightened, but before he could reply, Elizabeth Chen rejoined them. Mrs. Williams, your granddaughter's implementation approach is fascinating. The community adoption rate far exceeds typical patterns for new technology integration. The conversation shifted. Victor retreating as Chen engaged Mabel and Destiny in detailed questions about their community engagement methods. This pattern repeated throughout the day, moments of tension or obstacle followed by unexpected support, challenges met with growing coalition of advocates. As the showcase entered its final hour, Maxwell gathered everyone for announcements. The anticipation was palpable as he took the central platform. Today represents not just the culmination of our summer program, but the beginning of a new direction for the Foundation and Institute, he began. Based on the success of our pilot initiatives, the board has approved expanded funding for community innovation partnerships in 3 additional Chicago neighborhoods next year. Applause rippled through the crowd. Maxwell continued. Furthermore, we're establishing permanent fellowships for community-based innovators to continue their work beyond the summer program. His gaze found Destiny in the audience. These approaches, combining technical excellence with community wisdom, represent the future of truly meaningful innovation. As the formal program concluded and attendees mingled, Destiny found herself at the center of attention from industry representatives interested in the practical applications of her work. The contrast with her first days at the Institute, when she'd felt isolated by background and experience, couldn't have been more profound. Tyler appeared at her side, champagne flute in hand. Sparkling cider, he clarified, offering her the second glass he carried. For celebrating properly. Is there something specific to celebrate? Destiny asked. Check your email, he suggested with a smile. Her phone revealed the notification, an official offer for a year-round position with the Institute, including continued development of her project, mentorship responsibilities for future community, fellows, and full academic support through high school and beyond. The opportunity represented everything she'd hoped for, yet Destiny felt a moment of hesitation. This would mean more time away from Blackwood Gardens. It would, Tyler acknowledged. But it also means more resources flowing back. The bridge works both ways, remember? Across the room, Victor engaged in intense conversation with several board members, his gestures suggesting continued opposition. The path forward wasn't secured. Institutional resistance to change remained. Financial priorities would continue to be contested. The balance of power would shift with circumstances. Yet looking around the room, at Mabel proudly discussing community implementation with potential funders, at Amika demonstrating the app to newcomers, at Maxwell and Sophia strategically building support for their vision, Destiny recognized that something fundamental had transformed. What began as her solitary journey had become a collective movement, gathering strength from multiple directions. The rising stakes extended beyond her personal opportunity to the potential for systemic change. If they could maintain momentum, if they could demonstrate that this approach delivered meaningful results, if they could continue expanding their coalition of support. As the showcase drew to a close, Destiny stood at a threshold of possibility that extended far beyond what she'd imagined when she first found a shivering golden retriever behind her building. The challenges ahead remained significant, but she no longer faced them alone. The Foundation. Boardroom fell silent as Victor completed his presentation. Charts and projections filled the massive screen behind him, numbers carefully selected to support his position that community-based initiatives represented misallocation of resources that could be better invested in measurable outcomes. The sentimental appeal of these projects is undeniable, he concluded. But our responsibility is to maximize impact. Concentrated investment in proven academic channels simply delivers better returns than these experimental approaches. The opposite end of the table, Maxwell sat with controlled composure. The quarterly board meeting had become the battleground for competing visions of the Foundation's future. Despite Victor's formal removal from scholarship oversight, his influence with certain board members had only intensified, culminating in today's proposal to redirect funding away from the community innovation partnerships that had been Destiny's focus for the past 6 months. Thank you, Victor, Maxwell responded evenly. Before we move to discussion, we have one final presentation scheduled. The boardroom doors opened to admit Destiny, followed by Dr. Ramirez. At 13, now in her first year of high school, Destiny carried herself with a confidence that belied her age. The past months as a fellow had accelerated her growth, not just in technical skills, but in her ability to navigate institutional politics and present complex ideas to diverse audiences. Good afternoon, she began, connecting her tablet to the display system. I'm here to provide context for the decision before you regarding community innovation partnerships. For the next 15 minutes, Destiny presented a comprehensive analysis that methodically addressed each point in Victor's argument. Where he had shown isolated metrics, she provided integrated data demonstrating broader impact. Where he emphasized traditional academic measures, she revealed how community implementation delivered practical outcomes that academic success alone couldn't guarantee. The air quality monitoring system we began at Blackwood Gardens has now been implemented in 3 additional neighborhoods, she explained, displaying a map of Chicago with highlighted zones. Emergency room visits for respiratory conditions have decreased 28% across these areas, representing healthcare cost savings of approximately $1.2 million in 6 months. Board members leaned forward, their attention captured by numbers that spoke their language. Destiny continued, building her case systematically. Beyond direct health impacts, we're seeing educational improvements in these communities. She displayed school attendance data. When children can breathe, they can learn. When they can learn, they can achieve. When they achieve, her gaze met victors directly. They don't need charity, they become contributors. The presentation continued, each slide reinforcing her central argument that community-based innovation represented not charitable distraction, but strategic investment with demonstrable returns. The approach Maxwell had championed, which Victor dismissed as sentimental, was proving remarkably effective when properly measured. As she concluded, Destiny faced the board with quiet confidence. The question isn't whether these initiatives deliver value. The data confirms they do. The question is whether this foundation wants to lead in developing new approaches to persistent challenges, or simply maintain traditional patterns that have failed to create lasting change. Victor immediately launched his rebuttal, questioning methodologies and suggesting the results represented temporary patterns rather than sustainable trends. The board's discussion intensified, technical questions intermingling with philosophical debate about the foundation's core mission. Throughout, Destiny maintained her composure, responding to queries with data-driven clarity. This moment represented the culmination of months of preparation, not just her individual growth, but the collective effort everyone who had contributed to demonstrating the value of their approach. The decisive moment came when Richard Morales, a board member who typically aligned with Victor, shifted position. The healthcare cost savings alone justify continued investment, he observed. But I'm particularly struck by the educational outcome data. If these programs are helping children stay in school and perform better academically, they're addressing our core mission through an unexpected channel. Victor attempted to redirect the conversation, but momentum had shifted. Additional board members began asking forward-looking questions about expansion possibilities rather than challenging the fundamental approach. I believe we've heard sufficient information for a decision, Maxwell finally stated. The proposal before us is to direct funding from community innovation partnerships to traditional scholarship channels. Those in favor? 3 hands raised. Victors and 2 loyal supporters. Those opposed? The remaining 9 board members, including Richard Morales, voted against Victor's proposal. The motion fails, Maxwell announced. The community innovation partnerships will continue with full funding as previously approved. The outcome represented more than a procedural victory. It signified institutional validation of the approach Destiny had championed since returning Maximus nearly a year earlier. The belief that meaningful innovation required bridging divided worlds rather than simply extracting talented individuals from challenging environments. As the board meeting adjourned, Victor approached Destiny in the hallway. His expression revealed calculated reassessment rather than defeat. Impressive performance, he acknowledged. You have a future in this world, if you're willing to pursue it properly. What do you mean by properly? Destiny asked, recognizing an offer beneath the comment. I have connections beyond this foundation, opportunities that could advance your career significantly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. All that passion could be channeled more productively. The implicit suggestion was clear. Abandon her community-based focus for more traditional advancement. The offer represented exactly the trap Destiny had come to recognize. The pattern of extracting talent without addressing systemic issues, of advancing individuals while leaving communities behind. Thank you for recognizing my potential, Mr. Harrington, she replied carefully. But my work is exactly where it needs to be. Victor's expression hardened. Loyalty to Maxwell is commendable, but limiting. He won't always be there to protect these pet projects. This isn't about loyalty to any individual, Destiny responded. It's about effectiveness. The data speaks for itself. As Victor walked away, Maxwell approached. I couldn't help overhearing. He offered you an opportunity. Of sorts, Destiny confirmed. The kind that would separate me from everything we've built. Maxwell nodded, understanding. The old pattern. Identify talent, extract it, leave the underlying conditions unchanged. He smiled. I'm glad you recognized it. I learned from experience, Destiny replied. Both mine and yours. Together, they walked toward the Foundation's main entrance, where Sophia waited with Maximus, now older but still enthusiastic, when he spotted Destiny. The board vote is just one battle, Maxwell cautioned as they walked. Victor won't stop pushing. His vision. I know, Destiny acknowledged, but neither will we. Outside, a van waited to transport community representatives who had provided testimony earlier in the day back to their neighborhoods. Mabel stood with the group, pride evident, as Destiny approached. They approved it? Mabel asked. Destiny nodded, embracing her grandmother. Full funding, continued expansion. The victory belonged not just to Destiny, or even to Maxwell's vision, but to everyone who had contributed to demonstrating a new model, one that valued community wisdom alongside technical expertise, that built bridges rather than escape routes. As the van departed for Blackwood Gardens, Destiny remained at the Foundation with Maxwell and Sophia, transitioning from the board confrontation to planning next steps. The day represented a pivotal moment. But the work continued. Victory created opportunity for further advancement, rather than conclusion. 1 year after finding Maximus, Destiny stood in Blackwood Gardens Community Center, watching residents interact with the comprehensive resource platform displayed on the large touchscreen. What had begun as a simple air quality monitoring system had evolved into an integrated community support network, connecting residents with healthcare resources, employment opportunities, educational programs, and emergency services. The transportation module is getting the most use, reported Lucia, a 20-year-old resident who now worked as the center's technology coordinator. People are finding jobs they couldn't access before because they can coordinate rides. The observation highlighted the interconnected nature of community challenges, how air quality affected health, how health affected school attendance, how education affected employment, how employment affected housing stability. The platform Destiny had helped address these connections rather than treating issues in isolation. We're seeing similar patterns across all 4 implementation sites, Destiny noted, making adjustments to the system based on usage data. The changes in Blackwood Gardens over the past year weren't dramatic physical transformations. The buildings remained the same, the elevator still functioned sporadically, economic challenges persisted, yet subtle shifts had accumulated into meaningful impact. The resource platform increased access to existing services. The data collected strengthened advocacy for policy changes. The community engagement process built social connections that enhanced resilience. Most significantly, residents increasingly viewed themselves as contributors to solutions rather than passive recipients of inconsistent outside assistance. The implementation team included local expertise at every level, compensating community members for their knowledge rather than extracting it for free. Mabel entered the center, returning from her shift at the hospital. Her role had evolved as, well, now serving on the Foundation's Community Advisory Board, providing perspective that guided investment decisions. The board approved the expansion to 3 more neighborhoods, she announced. And the hospital is adopting our alert system for all asthma patients. This represented another milestone. Institutional adoption of approaches that originated from community needs. The validation extended beyond the Foundation to public health systems, educational institutions, and government agencies increasingly interested in the measured outcomes. Outside the center, construction crews worked on the building's accessibility improvements, a separate initiative that had gained momentum as the technology implementation demonstrated community capacity for effective resource utilization. Maxwell arrived for the monthly coordination meeting, Maximus accompanying him as always. The dog, now inseparable from this story of connection, received affectionate greetings from residents who had come to know him through regular visits. Victor's resigned from the board, Maxwell informed Destiny and Mabel as they reviewed progress reports. Established his own foundation with a more traditional approach. The news represented neither complete victory nor cause for celebration. Victor's perspective would continue influencing educational philanthropy through different channels. Yet his departure removed a significant obstacle to the Foundation's evolved mission. The university partnership is confirmed, Maxwell continued. Their computer science department will be integrating community implementation methodologies into next year's curriculum. This academic validation represented another form of institutional change. Students from privileged backgrounds learning approaches that recognized community expertise rather than assuming outside solutions were inherently superior. As the meeting concluded, Destiny walked with Maxwell toward his waiting car. At 14, she now balanced high school studies with her continued role developing and expanding the community innovation partnerships. The dual focus, academic excellence alongside practical implementation, prepared her for future leadership in ways traditional educational paths alone could not. Harvard sent another recruitment letter, she mentioned casually. They're very persistent. Maxwell laughed. As they should be. You're exactly the kind of student they need, though perhaps not for the reasons they realize yet. The elite university's interest represented both opportunity and challenge. Destiny's accomplishments had placed her on trajectories typically reserved for students from privileged backgrounds, yet her commitment remained to approaches that bridged divided worlds rather than simply elevating individuals across barriers. I'm not making decisions yet, she clarified, but I'm thinking about how to maximize impact long-term. A perpetual question, Maxwell acknowledged. One I continue asking myself decades later. Their conversation reflected the evolving nature of their relationship, from initial benefactor-recipient dynamic to collaborative partnership in advancing shared vision. The mentor-mentee aspect remained, but with growing recognition of their complementary contributions. As Maxwell departed, Destiny returned to the community center, where Jamal and Tamika were training a group of younger children to use the system's educational modules. This knowledge transfer represented another dimension of sustainability, ensuring capabilities remained within the community rather than dependent on outside expertise. Later that evening, on the fire escape that still served as her reflective space, Destiny considered the transformations of the past year. Changes within herself, growing technical skills, expanding leadership capacity, deepening understanding of institutional dynamics. Changes within her community, increased resource access, strengthened social connections, enhanced advocacy, effectiveness. Changes within the foundation, evolved mission understanding, improved selection processes, more authentic community engagement. None represented complete solutions to entrenched challenges. Poverty, discrimination, resource inequity. These persisted despite meaningful progress. Yet the trajectory had shifted toward approaches that recognized the interconnected nature of these issues and the essential contributions of those most directly affected. Mabel joined her on the fire escape, the metal structure creaking slightly, as she settled beside her granddaughter. Thinking deep thoughts. Wondering what comes next, Destiny admitted. Harvard, Stanford, MIT. They all want me to visit. Talk about scholarships. Mabel nodded, understanding the implications. You're afraid of leaving all this behind? Not afraid exactly, just aware of the pattern. Talented kids get pulled into elite institutions, then gradually disconnect from their communities. Destiny sighed. I don't want that to be my story. Doesn't have to be, Mabel replied simply. Bridges work in both directions, remember? You've been proving that for a year now. The reminder resonated with Destiny's evolved understanding. That meaningful change required movement across boundaries in multiple directions, carrying resources and recognition where they had previously been denied. Besides, Mabel continued, you think I'm letting you go anywhere without making sure you remember your way home? Her tone was light, but carried the fierce love that had sustained them through challenges. Destiny leaned against her grandmother's shoulder, gratitude washing through her for this unwavering presence throughout their journey. Never doubted that for a minute. Below, the courtyard lights illuminated residents gathering for an evening community meeting. The scene represented neither dramatic transformation nor unchanged reality, but something more honest. The complicated, incremental process of community self-determination, supported by meaningful partnership rather than sporadic charity. 2 years. After finding Maximus whimpering behind Blackwood Gardens, 16-year-old Destiny stood on the stage at the National Science Foundation's Innovation for Impact conference. As the youngest ever keynote speaker, she addressed an audience of technology industry leaders, academic researchers, government officials, and community advocates. The most powerful innovation happens at intersection points, she explained, her confidence grounded in both theoretical understanding and practical experience. When technical expertise meets lived reality, when institutional resources connect with community wisdom, when we stop trying to solve problems for people and start solving them with people. The presentation highlighted the community implementation network that had grown from her initial air quality monitoring system to a nationwide consortium of similar initiatives. What began in Blackwood Gardens now operated in 27 communities across 12 states, each adapting the core approach to address local priorities. In the audience, Maxwell and Sophia represented the foundation that had evolved significantly. From its original model, the Harrington name had been removed following Victor's departure, replaced by Community Innovation Foundation, to reflect its transformed mission. Mabel watched from the front row, alongside Tamika and Jamal, both now paid community implementation specialists, overseeing Blackwood Gardens' continuing development. Their presence represented the project's commitment to building local capacity rather than perpetual outside management. The traditional model extracts talented individuals from challenging environments, Destiny continued. We celebrate when a few exceptional students escape difficult circumstances. But what about transforming those circumstances themselves? What about recognizing the expertise that already exists within communities facing complex challenges? The speech received standing ovation, followed by intense interest from attendees, asking about replication in their own contexts. What had initially been viewed with skepticism by traditional philanthropic and academic institutions was increasingly recognized as a necessary evolution in addressing persistent social challenges. Back in her hotel room that evening, Destiny reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Returning a lost dog had seemed such a simple act of compassion, yet it had created ripple effects beyond anything she could have imagined at 12 years old. Her personal transformation was evident. From uncertain girl to confident young woman, from isolated student to connected leader, from passive recipient of limited opportunities to active creator of expanded possibilities. She had mastered technical skills that opened professional pathways while developing the social understanding needed to bridge divided worlds. Maxwell joined her for dinner in the hotel restaurant, Maximus accompanying him as always. The dog, now elderly but still devoted, settled contentedly at Destiny's feet, the physical embodiment of connection between worlds that might otherwise remain separated. Harvard's early admission offer arrived, Maxwell mentioned as they reviewed the conference schedule for the following day. Destiny nodded. Along with Stanford, MIT, and Columbia. Decisions. Still considering options. Each offers different advantages for the work ahead. The casual discussion of elite university options would have seemed unimaginable 4 years earlier, yet represented not just Destiny's academic accomplishments, but the Foundation's evolved approach to talent development. Rather than extracting promising students from challenging environments, the model now supported their advancement, while maintaining community connections and implementation focus. Whatever you choose, Maxwell noted, the Foundation Fellowship continues through graduate school if you want it. The commitment represented institutional investment in Destiny's long-term development as a leader who could continue bridging technology, innovation with community implementation. Similar fellowships now supported dozens of students from backgrounds typically underrepresented in technology leadership. I'm leaning toward the Harvard-MIT combined program, Destiny admitted. Their community technology lab is doing the most aligned work. The East Coast location would create geographic distance from Chicago, but the networks she had helped build ensured ongoing connection. Technology enabled remote participation in key initiatives. Regular returns for implementation work maintained. Personal relationships. The Foundation's support structure facilitated movement between academic and community contexts. As dinner concluded, Destiny received a video call from Mabel, who had returned to Chicago immediately after the keynote to resume her hospital duties. Though officially retired from custodial work, she continued part-time while serving on multiple community development committees. Just checking in, Mabel explained, making sure all that applause isn't going to your head. Destiny laughed. Not likely with you keeping me grounded. Their relationship had evolved alongside Destiny's growing independence, mutual respect deepening the foundation of love and protection that had always characterized Mabel's care. Community center expansion got approved today, Mabel reported. Construction starts next month. The news represented another incremental improvement for Blackwood Gardens, not dramatic transformation, but steady progression toward greater resource, access and community self-determination. After the call, Destiny stepped onto the hotel balcony overlooking the city skyline. The view reminded her of countless evenings on the fire escape, watching distant lights while imagining possibilities beyond her immediate circumstances. The difference now wasn't just her literal elevation to higher perspective, but her understanding of how to connect those divided worlds rather than simply crossing between them. The following morning, preparing for the conference's final day, Destiny reviewed the journey that had brought her to this point. From finding a lost dog to launching a movement that continued expanding beyond her direct involvement. The transformation extended beyond her individual growth to institutional evolution and community empowerment. Maxwell met her in the lobby, conference credentials in hand. Ready for the closing panel? Destiny nodded. confidence grounded in purpose rather than pride. Ready, as they walked toward the convention center, Maximus trotting contentedly alongside, Destiny reflected on the interconnected legacies emerging from their shared journey. Maxwell's foundation had evolved from traditional philanthropic model to authentic community partnership. Blackwood Gardens had strengthened its capacity for self-advocacy and resource utilization. The technology sector had gained models for more inclusive and effective innovation approaches. Most personally, Destiny had discovered pathways forward that didn't require abandoning her origins. Each step in her academic and professional advancement created opportunities to strengthen rather than sever community connections. Her journey between worlds had become less about escape and more about building bridges that others could traverse in both directions. The conference's closing panel brought together perspectives from technology industry, academic research, policy development, and community implementation. As the youngest panelist, Destiny represented the emerging generation of leaders committed to integrated approaches that recognized the essential contributions of communities typically excluded from innovation processes. The future isn't about technology solving problems for people, she concluded as the discussion ended. It's about technology enabling people to solve problems together. The most powerful innovations happen when we connect resources with wisdom, technical capability with lived experience, institutional power with community knowledge. The applause that followed affirmed growing recognition of this approach, not just as moral imperative, but as practical necessity for addressing complex challenges that had resisted traditional solutions. As the conference concluded, Destiny stood, with Maxwell and Maximus at the convention center entrance, watching attendees depart with new connections and commitments established. What next? Maxwell asked, the question extending beyond immediate plans to larger vision. Destiny considered everything that had unfolded since that moment 2 years earlier, when she'd found a shivering golden retriever and shared her meager sandwich. The compassion that prompted that simple act had opened doorways she couldn't have imagined, not just for herself, but for interconnected communities of impact. Next, she replied with certainty born of experience, we keep building bridges.